Hi, Greg Benevent. Welcome back to another Website Depot podcast. As ever, we take this opportunity to talk to some of our clients, the kinds of people that, frankly, well, go out there and help other people. Today, we're very happy to have some people here from the Iris Healing Retreat. If you could tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, that'd be great.
Hi, my name is Dr. Elena Capustina. I'm the founder of Iris Healing Retreat. We are a boutique residential and outpatient treatment center in Woodland Hills, Los Angeles. We treat addiction and underlying mental health issues.
Yep, and thank you so much, Greg, for having us on. Really appreciate it. My name is Bobby Kane. I'm the Executive Director of Iris Healing. And we actually have multiple programs in multiple locations. So we have our detox residential facility, where clients typically stay with us and live with us for about 30 days. We have our outpatient facility, and soon we'll be launching our TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation and neurofeedback center. That'll be open to the public. So yeah, really excited.
Wow, that's a lot. Well, yeah. Well, all right. Well, let's get into it then. How does someone know if they themselves or a loved one should go to rehab?
Oh, well, that's you'd think it would be a no-brainer, but it's tough. I mean, I think a lot of people that are actively using, particularly if they're using heavier substances like heroin, for example. I've never heard of any recreational heroin users. You know, so you know, some people may just know, but then there's you know, more subtleties too, like you know, marijuana, with it being legalized in many states. There's definite potential for abuse with that, and there's actually a lot of complications that can arise from overuse of marijuana that most people aren't aware of. But we've seen marijuana-induced psychoses where like underlying schizophrenia is then triggered, and these people are now changed drastically, basically for their entire life. So that's definitely something to take into consideration. You know, with alcohol, it's so kind of supported and promoted, you know, and you know, commercially available, I guess. You know, there's things that the person would want to take into account. You know, is my life becoming unmanageable because of my use? Am I, you know, now depending on alcohol on a daily basis? You know, maybe their life's not in the gutter, maybe they're functioning, but maybe their life is kind of shrinking and getting a little bit smaller, and where they're not living or feeling as fulfilled as they once did. So that, I guess, would be the part one of the question for the individual. And then I guess part two, like signs and symptoms that, you know, a loved one may be using, if they tend to be isolating a lot more.
Mood changes
for sure. You know,
not present with the family and friends, not doing the activities they usually like to do, you know, lack of interest, apathy, obviously hangover, or when they have withdrawal symptoms. You know, prescription drugs have a lot of side effects and a lot of like signs as well when people, you know, utilize prescription drugs or abuse prescription drugs. It's a combination of things. It's a little bit more complicated because doctors prescribe it, but it's definitely something that we see on a rise recently.
Wow, a lot that goes into that. Well, yeah, I guess with that said, like, I mean, what are some of the misconceptions about treatment that you two run into in the course of your jobs there?
Well, people usually think rehab is very sterile and very dry and very punitive and boring. And a lot of people think, especially like you know, high functioning addicts, you know, they think, oh, I don't want to go to rehab with a bunch of junkies. But, you know, addiction does not discriminate. You know, we can see, you know, among our clients, anybody from failure to launch young adults to really sophisticated, high-end, successful professionals. We see doctors, we see lawyers, we see anesthesiologists. You know, we see a lot of like high-end people, and you know, just because the doctor prescribed them, benzo or opiate for some pain, it doesn't make them less of a drug addict than, anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of very common misconception when people come and like see the facility and learn the program. They're like, wow, this is something that even for sober person would be good to be here and get some self-care done.
Most definitely. And the expense of it too. A lot of people are under the impression that, this is going to cost me, $100,000. And that's definitely not the case. And later on, we can kind of get into, insurance and costs and things of that nature too, if you'd like.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I guess that sort of leads into my next question. I was wondering, like, okay, there's so many rehabs out there. Like, what makes one rehab better than another? Is it just the facilities, or I mean, what's that come down to? Like,
there are a million different distinctions and things that one would want to take into consideration when selecting a rehab, because I mean, it is a time commitment. It oftentimes requires some type of financial contribution, particularly if you don't have health insurance. And you don't want to go to a place that's not going to be able to provide you with the services that you require in order to fully heal. I think on average, I think the statistics are like people go to rehab 7 times before finally achieving and maintaining long-term sobriety.
Oh, wow.
So, even if they're only 30-day programs, that's still like, 3/4 of a year that you're spending in treatment of your entire life. So you want to ensure that you're going to end up at the right facility. And there's definitely a lot to take into consideration when getting into why one facility may be better than another.
And definitely we always recommend, anybody looking for rehab to do your due diligence, do your research, do your legwork before you choose a rehab, because, if you don't go to the right place, if you don't go, if they don't provide services and meet your needs, and address underlying issues that you have, you feel like a failure, you feel like, addicts feel enough shame and guilt as is. So if you go to the wrong place and it doesn't help you, and you feel like, I didn't succeed, my parents spent all this money, or my family, and, and I'm using again. Well, maybe because, they didn't get to the issues that actually cause you to use in the first place. So that's really, really important to see, what kind of therapeutic modalities provided, how many individual sessions, whether family work is involved. After treatment planning is like utmost important thing, It's easy to come to rehab for 30 days and stay sober, but what do you do after, when you go back to your environment, back to your triggers, back to your family, back to your boss, your job, your dysfunctional relationship, whatever that is, what happens next? So after treatment is really, really important, and we talk about it on the first admission call, and, and credentials of your clinicians. Do you have actual licensed therapists running the program, running the group, doing individual sessions? How much individual work is done? How much group work? So there are there's a myriad of, factors. And size of the facility too.
Facility size is a huge one. Yep. Because no 2 people are alike, and there's really no one size fits all approach to recovery. So that's huge. So, and to kind of piggyback off of that, when she's mentioning credentials of clinicians, also the diversity of the clinical services that are offered, I think is very important, because, you're going to get a variety of different people in there that have that may have, and almost always have, some type of co-occurring disorder, whether it's depression, anxiety, PTSD, trauma, or some of the more, I guess, heavier types of mental health diagnoses, like borderline or any type of personality disorders,
schizophrenic, schizoaffective,
yeah,
DID, dissociative disorder, identity disorder,
things of that nature. So it's really important to have clinicians that are specialized in a variety of different areas on staff, so we are able to provide individualized treatment to that person and meet their specific needs. Many facilities don't do that. So one thing I would absolutely recommend would be that people, and Elena had mentioned, people do their due diligence. Read the Yelp reviews. Go to the Better Business Bureau site and see what their reviews look like.
See the testimonials, client testimonials. Do your research.
That's a big deal. And look at the staff page. of the facility.
Very important.
That's very important. If you know that you have a pretty severe co-occurring disorder or a long history of trauma, something like that, you're going to want to go on their staff page and ensure that their clinicians are ideally master's or doctoral level and certified in, either brain spotting or EMDR or somatic therapies that are really good for dealing with the traumas.
Yeah, also psychiatrist, it's very, very important, who the medical director of the facility is, and that psychiatrist who has a good track record. We've seen dozens and dozens of clients coming to us diagnosed with bipolar, mostly bipolar that is heavily misdiagnosed, at least in our experience. And clients are on the super heavy medications for that, but they were diagnosed while they were using. So you need to get off all of that and do full psychiatric evaluation and be properly medicated if you actually need medications. A lot of those clients were not bipolar. They were heavily depressed. So it's just a history of trauma. It's heavy PTSD. It's a dissociative identity disorder. There's plenty of other diagnoses. And it is very, very important that between psychologists and psychiatrists that you figure out the right diagnosis. Because if they're using and then they're on incorrect medications and or overly medicated, we see some clients, young clients, healthy, coming like zombies on so many, like on 15 medications that they can't function, they can't think. We take them all down, it's a different person, But you have to do it carefully, of course, if it's a proper diagnosis and proper medication. So it's really, really important to get to the bottom of it, like what's going on, what's the proper diagnosis. Trauma is huge. Like, most of addicts, they have severe history of trauma. So unless the trauma is processed and, worked on, it's not going anywhere. So you can, go from one substance to another, or you can go from addiction regularly, substance addiction to, sex addiction or gambling, or some other compulsive behaviors. So it's really, really important to get to the root of the problem and resolve it. And it's a long-term process. Usually it's not 30 days, trauma work takes time, commitment. It gets messy before it gets clean, but it's doable. We see dozens and dozens of clients doing that. And it's really, really important that, it's addressed at the treatment center.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, just from hearing that, there's so much that goes into the research a person would do before they'd even arrive. Just so many different things to look at. That's going to be incredibly helpful for folks listening to this. I was struck by something you said a couple times there, the co-occurring disorder. If you could explain a little bit more about that, because I've done some research and that just seems like that's such a big, important thing. If you could say more about that.
Yeah, I guess simply said, it would mean that somebody has a substance abuse disorder coupled with a either diagnosed or sometimes undiagnosed mental health condition. So they may not even be aware of it, but they may feel depressed and suspect that they have depression, or if their behavior is really erratic, or they're having like crazy mood swings, or they tend to disassociate, like that. Those would be things that you'd certainly want to take into consideration and vet the facility to ensure that they were able to treat those. And like Elena said too, and certainly vet their physicians and the psychiatrists as well, because we have seen frequently a tendency for facilities to overprescribe. And the ideal goal is to get people healthy and happy and productive, and not turn them into zombies by giving them some heavy medications that then require 10 other medications just to offset the the side effect from the first 10.
Oh man.
But yeah, the co-occurring disorders, I think it's really important to take into consideration and address it, specifically when it comes to trauma, like Elena had said.
Yeah, and it can be like schizoaffective, it can be schizophrenic, and all employees, everybody in the facility has to be trained how to deal with clients with that disorder, and psychoeducate other clients what that disorder is like, so they don't think, oh, I have a crazy person talking to himself walking around me, I'm out of here. It's really important to psychoeducate the family, psychoeducate the client, psychoeducate actual client, what's going on with him and how to cope with it and what to do. They can be bipolar, there is borderline personality disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, Dissociative identity disorder, huge. That there are over 200 types of dissociative identity disorder, and it's the most misdiagnosed and misunderstood diagnosis. And you need to know how to work with it, because the person splits in 11 separate personalities. One personality, we just had a client, one personality is using, another personality is self-harming, another personality has eating disorder, and they switch between those personalities. And it's not only clinicians, but the whole team has to be extensively trained on all of those diagnoses and how to deal with it. One of the clients we had was DAD. She went through 13 treatment centers, and she ran away, or she was kicked out from all of them because they had no idea what to do when she becomes a 5-year-old and starts a temper tantrum in the middle of the group. They don't train, they shocked, they don't know what to do, they drop the ball, and she came to us like a failure, and her family is like, nothing is going to help her. She's very smart, very high functioning, but she gets switched between personalities, and that's it. You need to deal with it. You need to know how to help her. She's been doing fine. She's been over a year, and I mean, she's living with with a partner, and she goes to work. And when she gets into her personalities, she knows how to deal with it. I mean, it's a lifelong work, and it's a lifelong commitment to therapy, but it's doable, and it's important that the entire staff knows how to deal with that diagnosis.
And I think your original question was, what makes one rehab any better than another? And, I think these are all very valid points that Elena brought up. And I don't practice like a bashing of other facilities, or, if anybody's out there and they're trying to make a difference, I respect that. But there are certainly people that do open these facilities that are specifically in it for the money, unfortunately. And, some red flags that people may want to look out for, I guess just off the top of my head, if they call the facility and they, their insurance is checked and they say, sure, come on in, and there's no like pre-screening via the phone to ensure that, that the client would be a good fit for them, and that the facility themselves can actually provide the services that this client needs, chances are it's a very cookie cutter, just kind of factory farm type facility. You want to get a pre-screening. We thoroughly pre-screen every client before they come to us to ensure that they're going to be a fit for us, and that we can provide them with what they need. And that every one of those screenings has to be approved by our clinical director. So if we can't help somebody for whatever reason, then, we won't take them. If there's a facility that's just like, yeah, your insurance looks good, come on in, that would be a red flag.
Most of them are call centers. Basically, you just call a call center and they take your insurance, and they say, I'm coming in. And also,
if you call a place and they say, well, we work for like 10 different rehabs, it's probably a bad sign.
Right. That would do it.
Like Bobby said, like it has to be a good fit for our facility. It has to be a good fit for the client. We have to make sure we provide services, but most important, it has to be a good fit for a milieu. We have 6 clients, we have only 6 beds, and if that particular client has particular triggers or events in their lives that can be triggered by the current milieu for whatever reason, that might not be a good fit for that client for that particular milieu, so that's really, really important. We would rather have a bed open and and make sure everybody's doing well versus bringing an extra client, and it's becoming an issue for the entire house, and and kind of like harms the benefit that clients reached by that point.
Yeah,
certainly.
And I guess most importantly, if a facility is offering to pay you to go there, stay the fuck away.
Oh my God. Oh wow, I didn't even know that was a thing. That's bad. That's
a big thing. It's referred to, in our industry as body brokering, and it's essentially a form of human trafficking. And thankfully, the various different kind of governing bodies are now beginning to police that and arrest people and hand out multiple decades of time.
Yeah, I would hope. That's
somebody with a good insurance policy, and they might go out to one treatment center and then they get picked up by one of these brokers that they meet at a meeting or something like that, and hey, I'll give you $8,000 to go to this facility or whatever it is. it's a horrible practice, and it kills people. There's people out there that will find people that are currently in treatment and pay them to relapse, put them up in a hotel for 2 days. They'll give them their drug of choice, let them get high, and then on day 3, they stop the drugs, they let them start detoxing and withdrawing, and they feel like shit, they feel like they're gonna die, and then they just drag them into these facilities that are gonna pay them. And it's horrible, it's disgusting, and so if anybody's offering you money, that would be my biggest red flag. Like, just immediately blacklisting that person ever, forever.
Wow. Also, labs, the P
labs,
the golden shower.
Yeah, it's important to ask, I think, if the toxicology lab that the facility is utilizing is in network with their insurance.
Okay, yeah.
I have seen cases where single urinalysis cups go out, and then we receive what's called the estimation of benefits back, where the client gets in, sends us a picture or whatever, and they're billing over $6,000 to drug test for 1 cup of pee, which is crazy.
Yeah,
insurance isn't going to pay that.
That's something of a markup. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So insurance may pay a couple $100, and then guess what? Months later, after the treatment's completed, the family or the client themselves are getting these bills for tens of thousands of dollars for pee tests in the mail.
Wow.
So that's definitely something.
That's excellent that the two of you covered all of that, because those were all, as my facial recognition expression showed, things I had never heard before. That was multiple levels of terrifying and informative. Thank you. So yeah, it's but touching on what two of you were talking about there for a bit. So what are the costs? I mean, how do people pay for this? You kind of talked around it a bit. I mean, what's the nuts and bolts there?
Costs will vary greatly, and one thing that I want to emphasize is that more expensive doesn't necessarily mean better. That's one thing, definitely. It may be maybe a more luxurious house, and it may be on the ocean or something, but it may not provide. They may provide much less in terms of the actual clinical services, which is that's what's going to help people to get well. It's going through and doing the hard work and working with these credentialed people who have years of experience that can actually help you. An ocean view is great, but it's not everything to consider. So not expensive doesn't mean better, or more expensive doesn't necessarily mean better. Average costs, I would say, I've heard of facilities as low as $15,000 a month. And I've heard of facilities as high as, there was one in London that was like $325,000 a month or something like that.
Wow.
Average costs, I would say, are probably between $35,000 and $45,000 per month at detox residential level of care for the first 30 days. If a facility has a full continuum of care, average costs for PHP, or partial hospitalization, which is done on an outpatient basis. So the client would generally live in a supervised living home and then attend therapeutic services at the outpatient facility 6 hours per day, 5 days per week. Average cost is, I would say, between 10 and 15 grand roughly per month for that level of care. And then, so maybe it would be best if I kind of explain levels of care too.
That was where I was going next.
Yeah, so just so it makes sense. So there's kind of a graduating or titrating level of care system. So you'll start at the detox level of care, where you're getting all of the toxins and drugs out of your body. And that's generally 7 to 10 days, depending on what you're using, how much of it you've been using, how long you've been using it for, etc. Then you'll get into the residential program. That's where the real intensive therapeutic services begin. And that's 7 days a week. Services are provided generally 6-7 hours per day. And that level of care, generally speaking, particularly if you're utilizing insurance, it usually lasts about 30 days. Then you'll move on to the partial hospitalization, which I just mentioned, which is, I don't know, 10 to 15,000 per month, 6 hours a day, 5 days per week. Following that, that'll usually last about 30 days. Following that, there's what's called intensive outpatient, or IOP. And that is generally begins at 5 days per week, 3 hours per day. Costs for that are usually, I don't know, anywhere from $7,500 to $9,500 per month.
Okay.
And that can last another about 60 days. So that kind of roughly explains the levels of care and what the cost would be if you were to pay fully out of pocket. The good news is that rehab is covered for under health insurance. It's
Good.
considered a medical problem because it does addiction literally and changes the physiology of the brain. So with insurance, you can expect to spend some money. It's going to depend based on your insurance, whether the facility is in network with your insurance or not. There are different types of insurances and different carriers will reimburse at different rates. So there's a lot to take into consideration there. I'll try not to get too deep into it because, most people I'm sure would be a little bored by insurance, but if you have a PPO policy, that means that you do have out of network as well as in network benefits. That essentially means you can go to any facility and a portion of the cost will be covered. The difference between in network and out of network: in network, the member expenses like the deductible and out of pocket maximum, these are costs that the client themselves will be responsible for. In network, they tend to be lower. So oftentimes I'll see in an insurance policy where, out of network, they have a $4,000 deductible that they would have to meet, whereas in network, it may be $1,000.
Ah, wow.
Yep. Another substantial difference, which kind of goes back and relates to the toxicology that we talked about, is when a facility is contracted as in network, that facility has agreed with that insurance carrier that this is the set rate. So you can be assured that you're not going to receive any balance bills in the mail, months after leaving treatment. So you go, you pay your $1,000 or whatever your copay is, and then the rest is covered by insurance until you get to the lower levels of care. Presently, sober living homes or supervised living homes, the two terms are kind of used interchangeably, but generally what it is, it's supportive housing where other people that have completed a residential program, they'll move into the supportive housing. There's accountability, there's X amount of meetings they may want you to attend per week. They may want you to have a sponsor. They're going to drug test you as well. They can search your room, but there's going to be a curfew. So it's just to ensure accountability for the people that are in there. And costs can also very widely vary for those supervised living homes, depending on amenities and accommodations, how many people to a room, et cetera, and location, of course. So, in our area, I would say anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 is fairly standard per month. Okay. But there's also some that are as high as $10,000 to even $60,000 a month. If you want to be in a bougie place in Malibu, like on the water, and
right.
And I'm not saying anything bad about those places. It's just, if you have the resources, go for it. They're great, but it can be cost prohibitive to some. So, but yeah. So I guess that's about it about insurance. As much as she wants me to get into insurance, anyway.
Well, I think I was going to ask, is there more than one level of care or type of treatment? But it seems like you covered that in pretty great detail there in and of the insurance. If there's anything else you want to throw in, feel free. But my next question was about, it obviously, as we've seen from our discussion today, there's some unscrupulous places out there. And so, what are some of the licenses and accreditations that Iris has that, people can be like, hey, you can look at this. This is something you can trust.
Well, we are licensed and accredited by DHCS, and also we are accredited by Joint Commission, which is a golden seal of healthcare industry.
Hmm.
DHCS is the Department of Healthcare Services. So it's a state license, and they're also an overseeing body. So there's standards and regulations that each facility has to conform to that are laid out by the state. And then the Joint Commission elevates those standards many steps further. And there's very strict criteria that a facility has to operate under in order to maintain their Joint Commission accreditation.
And we have constant inspections. It's like, there is a lot of like overseeing. So it's not like just they give you once and you can do whatever you want. They actually oversee it and test it and check it on a regular basis. We're also licensed for IMS, that's Incidental Medical Services. So we can provide medical services in our residential facility. Doctor can come on site, nurses, we have nurses. So, we can provide medical services pretty much.
Gotcha. No, that all sounds real great. I guess that sort of feeds into, my next question was going to be, I mean, it's, we've talked, what is it specifically that separates Iris from some of the other places that you might be researching out there?
Couple of things. Multiple things. Well, we have 6 doctorate level clinicians working with our clients. Everybody has their own specialty. One of our clinicians has PhD in somatic psychology. Our clinical director, Dr. Vincent, has PhD in in-depth psychology. Our other clinician, Dr. Mahoney, she worked for 15 years for lockdown mental health facility. She's amazing with any type of, heavy dual diagnosis clients, schizophrenics. Dr. G has a PhD in forensic psychology, so she worked with sex offenders and sex abusers for many, many years. So she's amazing working with really heavy criminal clientele or criminal background, or also people that were sex abuse victims. So we have a social worker. So we have a really highly credentialed and highly experienced staff. We have 2 nurses on staff. We have amazing psychiatrist, medical director. And the program-wise, we have a variety of modalities that we use. And we do neurofeedback in-house. Every single clinician is trained on brain spotting, which is amazing trauma treatment modality. The foundation of our program is spirituality. It's not religion, it's spirituality. So it's connection to self and others on a deeper level. How do you live, spiritually, your spiritual well-being, your spiritual health? So we do a lot of, we have a lot of programming on that specific topic. Couple other things, I guess, family therapy.
Yeah, that's a big component. We are kind of known as what's referred to as a holistic facility, and I think that word is oftentimes kind of misused or misinterpreted.
I was going to ask you about it later on. Yeah. That's a word that's so many different meanings. Holistic. Yeah. I'm never sure the definition whenever somebody says like, "Oh, this is holistic," and I'm like, okay, like it. Yeah.
In our sense of the word, it basically just means that we treat the whole person. So in addition to the clinicians and their various different specialties, we take nutrition into account. We have a chef that cooks 3 meals a day for our clients. If they're vegan, vegetarian, paleo, we'll meet their dietary needs, accommodations, restrictions, preferences, whatever it may be. The physical person, we bring in yoga. We do a lot of, although COVID's kind of restricted things for us a little bit, but a lot of adventure therapies, hikes and beach outings and paddleboarding, things of that nature. So
every morning starts with morning meditation. Morning meditation. We have a beautiful meditation room with gong from India, so we do gong meditation, intention setting every morning before the first group. We have breath work group. We have spiritual guidance. We have spiritual director who does amazing spiritual guidance sessions with clients. We have art and music therapy. We have rock to recovery music therapy where clients create a song with a professional musician and they play that song, they create words, they create lyrics, and they actually post it online after, with confidentiality, of course, clause.
Right.
So they really enjoy that part.
Wow.
We have a Serenity Circle by the Fire led by one of our clinicians. So they do Reiki, aromatherapy, they do angel cards. So there's a lot of spiritual kind of connection component to our program
Mhm.
that we think is really, really important because, opposite of addiction is connection. So once you
Mm.
get connected to self and others on a deeper level, it's like a light bulb that turns on. It's really, really, really important. Um, one of our books, our main book is 4 agreements. So all the clients study 4 agreements, and it's been really, it's simple, but it's so helpful, and it just reiterates so many important moments for your life. Um,
Yeah. So
we have animal therapy too. We have animal therapy where one of the clinicians comes with dogs and rabbits, and they do agility course, and it's
Oh,
almost like a teamwork. It's a teamwork where clients decide who's doing what, which section, and then they discuss and process it. So that's amazing too. And we have 2 other group facilitators who do spirituality groups of different types. It's like, energy is involved, and communication, and addressing anger, and how do you cope with difficult situations, but it's all taken from a spirituality lens.
And I think it's important to mention too, like maybe parents of have a child that's struggling with substance abuse or something, and they're hearing in this and they're saying, no, it sounds like I'm sending my kid to fucking summer camp or something like that. He's going to be surfing and playing with animals and doing
making
yoga
songs.
yeah. How's that going to help him get better? But just to give you a personal story, I struggled with addiction for in excess of a decade.
Oh wow.
And I stopped talking to all of my friends. I stopped doing all of the things that I at one time liked to do in terms of activities. And I maybe a week or 2, it was probably 2 weeks into my treatment here after relocating to California, that one of my therapists asked me, so what do you like to do for fun? And my face was just blank, and I thought about it, and I was like, I really have no fucking idea, because I haven't done anything in 10 years other than fun.
Right.
And so reintroducing
Oh man.
these activities to the clients helps them to find enjoyment in life free of substances. So I think that's why these activities are such a critical component.
Sober fun activities that, we took clients bowling, well, before COVID times, of course. We take them on Saturdays, we take them to the movies and bowling and Shrine Lake, we do yoga at the beach, running, hiking, you name it. So we kind of introduce life to them. And, a couple of clients were like, oh my God, I've never went bowling sober. Like, it was so weird. It was such a different experience.
Right.
So it's really important to say that there is life out there. There are a lot of things you can do other than drugs, and you can enjoy it, and you can connect with people, and you can have joy and happiness, yourself. So it's very, very important. So that's what holistic means. You do deep trauma work, you do deep therapy. At the same time, you balance it out with having fun and having the lighter side that, to process all of that. It just helps him to integrate all of those experiences, body, mind, and spirit. That's all important. That's all has to be connected.
100%.
I mean, that makes so much sense. You guys put it that way. I mean, that really laid it out very clearly. Thank you. Something that I think you touched on there in either that question or one of the prior ones was that the roles of family. Like, how does family, figure into this? Do you involve the family in the treatment typically, or how does that work out? Like,
family is a really important part of our program, and that's kind of a couple of things that we mentioned on the first admission call, after treatment planning, family work, and family, it's, addiction is a family disease. It's a family system disease. So, I like this kind of metaphor, like you take a little kid from the swamp or from the pile of
Mm-hmm.
mud, you clean them up, and then you put it back in the mud. You know, what's going to happen to them? It's going to be exactly the same thing. It will just
Gotcha.
repeat itself. So family has to be involved unless it's completely dysfunctional, toxic family or using family.
Mhm.
In that case, which happens as well,
Hmm.
we help clients to build healthy boundaries with the family and the healthy relationship of whatever that looks for that particular family system. But we usually involve the family, whether it's husband, wife, parents, whoever the closest support system for the client is. We usually involve once the client joins with his therapist, stable, usually I would say second, third week, sometimes fourth week if it's a very long detox, if it's a heavy benzo user. It really depends where the client is at. So once the client is stable and like have this foundation, therapeutic relationship and foundation developed, then the family gets involved. We have family visitation on Saturdays. They come to have lunch with the clients. We have amazing chef. She cooks lunch for everybody. So, and then we have family therapy. You know, it's on individual basis. We don't have family program like large facilities do. It's family by family, and we can do it remotely if they're out of town. But we had families traveling even from Europe for like 4 or 5 day intensive family therapy. We had people travel from all over the States, because once you psychoeducate the family and explain how important family work is and family support and healthy boundaries and healthy relationships, you know, and family realizes it, and they never knew about it, and they're willing to fly, they're willing to put their work, and they're willing to go to CODA meetings. We recommend Al-Anon meetings, and you know, we highly recommend that. We recommend books to read. We have a big resource library that, you know, based on a diagnosis, you know, we recommend, you know, family to educate themselves. There are a lot of TED Talks, there are a lot of movies. So we provide a lot of resources to the family to understand their loved ones and to support them to the best of their ability. It's really, really important.
And there's always something within the family dynamic that needs to be shifted. And it doesn't necessarily mean like that it's like the family is bad, but like oftentimes the drug user becomes kind of like the identified patient or the black sheep, and you know, may have a lot of blame cast on them, or you know, maybe fed a lot of negativity. So by educating the family, they can then understand that this is a disease, and we can, you know, help them to develop some compassion and understanding, and then the family dynamic can, you know, the roles can shift a little bit. Or conversely, get a lot of clients that have super enabling parents.
Oh, geez.
Who kind of essentially kind of co-sign their bullshit, and you know, so we need to coach them. You have to have boundaries. You have to set expectations. You have to adhere to them. You know, we give them resources. You can go find help here or here or here about it. But, you know, if you go back and you know, your 30-year-old kid is still living in your basement and you're giving them allowance and paying for their drugs and everything, like it's not going to work. So it's important to have the whole.
And same with toxic relationships, you know, there are a lot of abusive like husbands and wives, and there's a lot of codependence in a lot of relationships. So we have seen the whole family system shifted and realizing like, yeah, we have bigger issue. Addiction is just like one of the little symptoms, you know, one of the family members, but there is a bigger elephant in the room, and people, it's like their eyes open. They're like, we need to do our own work, whatever that is. It can be therapy, it can be intensive grief work, it can be intensive trauma work, it can be couples work. So we provide resources, we help find the resources. So we really encourage families, you know, to get better as a whole family system.
Yeah, no, I mean, that you have to have that. I mean, so the person has the best chance to get through it. That makes so much sense. I was struck by something you said a little while back about how, you know, aftercare comes up in that first, like, initial phone call. I mean, what can you tell us more about aftercare and how it works and what all that is?
You know, we don't do standalone detox for a reason, because clinically we don't believe it works. Very, very rarely it works. People come, they detox, they get off substances, and you know, imagine you using alcohol or opiates. What it does to you, it makes you numb. You don't feel feelings, you don't feel emotions. And once you detox, you get substances out of your body. You feel like shit usually, pardon my French. And then you get overflooded by all these feelings and emotions, and you know, you can't handle it. It has to be contained. And that's why a lot of overdoses happen when people get out of detox. Because their tolerance is down, they use just a little bit, just because they can't tolerate those emotions, it helps them cope, and they overdose. And that's why we license for detox, and it pays better, but we don't do standalone detox unless they commit to at least 30 days residential plus after treatment plan, whether with us or it doesn't have to be with us. They can go back home, and we always help with resources. And that's what we explain on the first call, that just detox in 99% of cases, at least in most cases that we've seen, you know, and we are very connected in our industry, you know, we've seen a lot of cases and we know of a lot of cases, it does not work. And that's the most important thing to explain to clients right away, and then offer them, you know, after treatment options.
And there are published statistics on it. Like the longer time that you spend in treatment, the better your odds of maintaining, you know, abstinence or long-term recovery become. So aftercare is in my opinion, it's a very crucial component. So
I think it's more important than actual detox and residential.
Oh, wow.
I would agree. Yeah, because it gives you that chance, because when you're coming, you know, just for example, when a client is coming to intensive outpatient and they're coming here for, you know, therapy 3 hours per day, and they're in that supervised living home where they have accountability, but, you know, outside of that 3 hours that they're with us, they have the remainder of their day to kind of gradually begin to reintegrate into quote unquote real life. So, you know, they may go out and start looking for jobs, or they'll have opportunities to go hang out with people, or, you know, kind of go to meetings. And if they struggle with anxiety, you know, maybe speaking up at a meeting and challenging themselves a little bit, that can be a big thing. So, you know, I think it was very intentionally designed, the titrating systems and the levels of care. And we've had clients stay with us in aftercare for
18 months.
Yeah, I was going to say in excess of a year.
And we help them lounge. We help them, like, I mean, they can come only once a week for therapy and twice a week for neurofeedback. So it's not like they stay in groups all day long. So we actually like to titrate them and like help them lounge. We have case managers who help them apply for jobs, write the resume, and apply to college. You know, we have a client right now. Well, we have an employee right now who's amazing, who was our client 2 years ago after 11 overdoses. And she's a 4.0 addiction studies student right now. And she managed sober living before we hired her when she hit 2 years sober. And she's amazing. She's a superstar. Hopefully she's going to be a manager at some point. And she's inspiring, and she's sponsoring other girls. And, you know, she's just pure, you know, motivation, you know, for everybody else.
Great.
It really is. And that case management is also another point to hit on. That's something that's really important, and that occurs at the aftercare level. So,
I mean, it starts at residential, like looking for sober living and looking for the next step.
Right. But if somebody needs help with legal issues, or they need help finding a lawyer, if they need dental work, or they need, you know, some medical work, or they need to, you know,
apply for insurance.
If they have no, you know, familial support, they may need, you know, to secure some government aid, you know, things of that nature. Like I said, applications for school, resumes, jobs, etc. So that's a huge component too.
Because now you're sober, but what do you do next? You need to take a step, right? So you don't go to your old bad behavior. You have to find what its hobbies, a support group. Support groups is very, very important.
No, that certainly is very clear to me. Yeah, from what you two said. You know, on that note, you mentioned a lot of different treatment modalities. Are there any that you wanted to bring up that you haven't, or ones that really stood out to you that you felt people should know about that they might not? Or
well, we utilize a variety of treatment modalities. So that are really, I think a combination of those modalities is really important. You know, we do a lot of somatic work, somatic experiencing work. We do a lot of experiential therapy, such as psychodrama. We utilize neurofeedback, which is absolutely amazing. It's like a gym for your brain. It basically rebalances your brain waves. It's great for insomnia, for anxiety, for PTSD, for nightmares, flashes like, even pain management. So neurofeedback is absolutely amazing. All of our clients get neurofeedback sessions. Spiritual guidance is important. We do in-depth psychology sessions, family systems, a lot of psychoeducation therapy. As I mentioned, there are a lot of holistic breath work, yoga, art therapy, music therapy, animal therapy. What else? I mentioned breath work, I think, meditation. We do brain spotting, that's individual therapy. We do hypnotherapy. What am I missing? DBT, CBT, relapse prevention, coping skills. What else?
That's a lot. I mean, you mentioned plenty right there.
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
You're looking at him, you're like, are there any left? I'm like, are there any left that exist, let alone ones that you guys do? Like, but yeah.
We do psychological testing as needed. We have Macmillan and MPI-2 and TOVA tests. So we can do a full array of psychological testing.
Okay.
Personality testing and ADHD testing as well.
Cool.
And of course, psychiatric evaluations and all the medical stuff.
Wow. So much. Well, I mean, this has been wonderful and informative. I mean, I've learned more just sitting here with you today than I did in how many years of watching movies where someone's in rehab and then they're out, and then, I mean, this has been, I've learned so much during this. Is there any last thing, anything else you want people to know before we wrap this up here?
Well, I did put together a little just kind of side-by-side comparison sheet for people, and maybe we can provide a download link in the video to that. So it's just something they can print out. It asks a lot of questions that we've kind of gone over in this podcast, but list them one by one, and then have columns next to it where you can fill in the answers for these questions.
Yeah.
So it'll ask does your facility offer the following modalities? And then in 3 different columns, it lists all the modalities. You just check the boxes. That way, it enables people to really
compare and ask the right questions.
To compare and have some certainty that they or their loved one is really going to the best possible facility.
Basically, it's a list of right questions to ask that you want to know before you go, rather than find out when you go there and it didn't work out for some reason.
Location also comes to mind. I think that's really big. I'm originally from Connecticut, and I went to a rehab in Connecticut. I knew nothing about rehab. Like most people, particularly when you're going for the first time, you're just like, if I can get this person in somewhere ASAP.
Right.
And that's what I did. I chose the place closest to my house, and I went there for 30 days. There was no individual therapy. There was, it was one 12-step meeting after the other. It was super high volume. Like it was, it was not quality care. And I came home, and no surprise, I relapsed a day later. I was just back to my old ways. There was no family therapy. There was no after, none of that. So, after that, I came out to California, and I spent some more time in treatment, and fortunately it was quality treatment, and they did provide these services. And I quickly realized, like when it was done at the end of 120 days, I was like, there's no way I can go back. I can't move back. I have to stay here. And fortunately I was able to make that work with the help of a lot of other very generous people. But sometimes getting out of that hometown,
where every single drug dealer.
Yeah. Right. Where you got the opposite of
a
sports.
Your ex-boyfriend and ex-girlfriend, or current boyfriend, current girlfriend, can call your mom. All of that stuff. Sometimes it's really important to get out of there.
It is, and even when I visit now, 6.5 years later, I'll still be driving through town. I remember getting high with so-and-so at that place, or remember when so-and-so crashed his car into this because he was too wasted or whatever. So, the triggers do come up still. And, fortunately I'm in a place where I can be mindful of them, but oftentimes a change of location can be very beneficial, in my opinion.
I bet.
I think one last thing that we kind of mentioned briefly, but it's a peer support groups and support groups. We encourage, we're not strict 12-step facility, but we introduce and encourage 12 steps and, getting a sponsor, doing the work. It's free, it's out there, it's amazing support group. We also introduce smart recovery meetings, refuge recovery meetings, and we actually hold free community smart recovery and refuge recovery meetings in our outpatient location. Whatever works for clients to maintain sobriety, to have peer support, to have connection. By the time they finish 30, 90, 60, 90 days with us, they have a whole support group. They have friends. They have somebody that they can call, if they're struggling, whether it's, cravings or it's a depression or it's, fight with a boyfriend or whatever that is. It's really important to build and, maintain that network, that peer support, that connection. It's free, it's out there, it's available. So it's really important for us that by the time our client is done with either residential or goes into outpatient, they have a solid support network that they can use and, and count on after they leave us.
Wow. Well,
yeah.
Thank you. I mean, this has been great. I've learned so much, and I'm sure the people watching this have as well. I mean, they can check you out online at if you give your site and your phone number, and then we'll wrap it up here. Yeah, where should they reach out to you if they want to know more?
It's irishealing.com, and that website will have our phone number. Our phone number, if you want to just call directly, it's 844-663-4747. Even if you just want to call for more information, even if you're just on the fence, like, do I need rehab or do I not? Like, if you're on the fence and you're thinking about it, you probably do. But yeah, this has been great, Greg. I always enjoy speaking with you, and I'm honored that you invited us to join you on this podcast today.
Hey, thank you for coming. This has been great. Thank you so much. Yes, and that's there's no better way to wrap it up than that. If you think you need rehab, you probably do. Yeah. So on behalf of Iris and our website Depot, my name is Greg Benevent. Take it easy. Have a good night.
Thank you.